when you talk about unbalanced, are you conceding that we get the short end of the stick with China, or what's the basic thrust there?
The basic thrust, Joe, and I'm crushed to know that you haven't read the book, but
I need a copy. I can't. You want me? Listen. I'll get a. Is there an audio copy?
Yeah, no, I'll read it to you personally, Joe.
Oh, second prize is you'll do that twice for me. Thanks, Steve. No. So what about unbalanced?
The basic thesis is that we both depend on one another. China certainly depends on the U.S. for its largest external market, for its export-led economy, but we depend on China. It's our third largest and most rapidly growing export market, as President Trump fails to understand. They're a major foreign buyer of U.S. treasuries, and they do provide us with low-cost goods that American consumers apparently need to make ends meet. So the idea that it's a one-way relationship, that we have all the chips and China's hurting, is not really one that's consistent with at least the arguments that I try to make in the book.
The one thing, Stephen, that I've been positing recently is we might play this song next. What a wonderful world it would be if both countries could see past the current disputes and symbiotically, it should be a really great relationship in the 21st century. It should be one of the greatest. And China has a lot of people that would like to increase their standard of living. And, over here, we've obviously needed a big trading partner. We'd like to satisfy the consumer needs of China. And so it could end up great. But do you concede that China has certain concessions that it needs to make so that we feel not unfairly treated in terms of IP theft and being able to do business on a level playing field? I don't think I've ever gotten you to concede that before.
No, I don't think you have either, Joe. But look, I agree with your wonderful world thesis. I mean, there is tremendous opportunity if both countries were to deal with each other fairly and take advantage of the needs that both have for one another. China, for example, is building a services-led consumer society. It'll be the biggest source of new demand in the world in the 21st century. Shame on us if we don't get a stake of that and convert that into a growth opportunity for us. There's a lot of talk, and I've engaged in a debate on your show before with all three of you over the allegations of intellectual property theft, forced technology transfer. And the point that I've made repeatedly in looking at these charges very carefully is that the evidence that the U.S. and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has presented to lay out these charges would not stand up in a U.S. court of law. It's flimsy evidence, and it's based on innuendo rather than hard, cold facts.
And you think the currency, where it is there are parts of the middle of the country, Steve, obviously, that have been decimated. It's not all China's fault, obviously, but, there's some steel dumping. There's got to be something. Anyway, Joe Zidle.
Yeah, Stephen, morning, Joe Zidle. Just a question. Do you think that we're likely to get a resolution to this before the election, before Trump's re-election in 2020?
I don't, Joe. I think there's still a chance that we'll get a deal, but certainly don't count on something before this October the 1st 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. So there's no imminent deal. China likes long and arduous negotiations, and they're more than prepared to go back to that. But the framework that we had that fell apart is just not it's a non-starter for China.
Let me get Tori in. Sorry, Tori. I know you're at the Heritage Foundation, so I'm afraid to even say. I'm not even going to say the T word to you. I know how you feel about those. So as quickly as we can not use that method to try to change behavior, the better, as far as you're concerned. Tariffs.
That's absolutely correct. You know, tariffs or taxes, that's kind of our motto these days over at the Heritage Foundation, has been for decades. Really what we're advocating for at the Heritage Foundation is for the president to be addressing our concerns with China, which I think some of them are legitimately pointed out, with more effective means. So Treasury Department sanctioning individuals and companies that violate U.S. intellectual property laws, taking more cases to the World Trade Organization, where we win most of the time and the U.S. government verifies that China changes its behavior. And there's a whole host of other ways that we could be directly addressing our issues with China, including with negotiations, without taxing the American people. And just so you know, in less than 48 hours, the tax burden on American families is going to go up by about $100 per family on Sunday, and that is just unacceptable.
Well, I understand that Heritage hates taxes, so you don't want to tariff. But what sometimes I don't understand, I mean, the left loves taxes, and you know, anything we want to affect socially, hey, there's a tax for that. So this could be a really legitimate long-term sort of a viewpoint to try to bring China. You know, Steve disagrees, but bring China into the real world in terms of fair trade. I don't know why the left can't see maybe that's a good use of tax dollars to try and get a fair playing field for such a huge relationship that we have.
Well, the problem is that it's an ineffective method.
What tax isn't? What tax isn't that the federal government solve something with?
That's usually the case. But in this scenario, I think there's a significant misconception by the Trump administration. They believe that these tariffs are taxes on the Chinese, but that's absolutely not the case. They're taxes on American businesses and American consumers. And then at the same time, American taxpayers are footing the bill for additional subsidies for agricultural producers who are being hurt by lack of market access in China as a result of retaliation. So it's really bad on both sides when, if you wanted to address these issues with China, you could just do it head on and really just get it with a scalpel and get right at the problem.